Thank you for joining us. Today we're excited to have one of our partner agencies with us today, the South Carolina Forestry Commission. In particular, we've got Brad Bramlett. Brad's been a 30-plus year veteran of the Forestry Commission, been a big partner of ours and friend to ours at the Fire Service, and especially during our conference each year. And we're excited to have him as he has just returned from a 14-day deployment where he served as a PIO under the IMT team, and his deployment was in Oregon for the Bootleg Fire, which we know is still ongoing. Thankfully, it's starting to get contained at 80+% at this point. But he's here today and talked to us about his service during that fire, serving as a PIO, one of many during this incident. He's come and talked to us, show us some videos that he has shot and some photos that he has taken during his deployment. And we're just excited to have him here and have him represent South Carolina and the Forestry Service during this deployment.
The Public Information Officer has several roles. When I went out first, I teamed up with what they call a Type 2 team. And the teams are typed from 3, 2, and 1. 3 being not as near as advanced, 2 is moderate, and Type 1 is the most advanced of the teams. And the team, when I first started, the Type 2 team from the Washington State, they needed an extra PIO. They had a full complement of overhead personnel, basically, logistics, finance, operations plans. And so I got there with the PIO team, the Public Information Officer. So they asked what was my skill set. I said, well, I've done a lot of things. I've done trap lines. Trap lines means basically you're going around a set area, either locally or in a community, and they have what they call these sandwich boards. And they're basically 4x4 sheets of plywood where they put up information like maps, closures for evacuations, what the fire is doing, where you can get more information on evacuation shelters. And so these trap lines are just routes all around. So some of them would take 2 and 3 hours to go drive around and put up these informations on these trap line boards. The big thing early on was the fire was growing so big. So one night it grew 50,000 acres, which was huge. And so they had a lot of evacuations. And the room where we were set up, we were based in the little town of Chiloquin, just a few hundred people, a very small high school where we were based. And so we had a call center set up there where the public could call in to find out what was going on. We would take calls. We had an information line where they could also go in online, and especially on social media, they could ask us questions. Some of the other roles that I would do would be to, later on, we transitioned as the fire grew, as it got to 300,000 and 400,000 acres. The fire was so long, at one time it was over 40 miles long, over 300 miles of fire perimeter. So the base that we were in, it took so long to get out to where the active part of the fire was. They have what they call FOBs, forward operating bases, and basically like spike camps. So we moved and transitioned out to what they call the ZX spike camp, which was closer to where the active part of the fire was. And then we would arrange to take the media out to the site, and they could see exactly what was going on. We could show them mop-up operations. We could show them areas that had already been burned. Obviously, this is the biggest fire I've ever been on. Last count, it's over 400,000 acres. So it's the biggest in the country. The other thing, it was very challenging in that it was fairly fast moving there at a while. It had one spot fire that came off of the main Bootleg Fire, and it actually created its own fire called the Log Fire. Slept in tents, which is fine, I didn't mind that. It was long days, 16 hours at least. We did do some of what we call night operations, where we would do our normal operations during the day, but then they also wanted to get some pictures at night and some videos at night. So we worked our 16-hour shift, and then they were going to do some burnouts at night. You got the fire that was still coming toward a fire break, and they wanted to strengthen up that the area that had not burned yet, so they came in and set a backfire. And so we got some really good videos of them doing that burnout operation. And but some nights we would get home at 1, 2 in the morning. So one day we had like a 20-hour day, and that was a pretty tough day. I tell you, I did actually learn a lot. Being with a Type 2 and then transitioning to a Type 1. So the Type 1 team from the Pacific Northwest had a wealth of knowledge. So we used Microsoft Teams. We could communicate back and forth, the file sharing. We used the Google phones. So the teams actually has the team phones, and we actually had it set up in our call center where you could go in and have 1, 2, 3, 4 set up in priority with the team phones. And if somebody had to leave the room or go to another assignment, they could just go through and immediately just change the roles on there. So I'm bringing a lot of that back. They also have this assignments list for what you're going to do for the next day. And they printed out, actually plotted out on this big, huge plotter and put it up on the wall. This fire was a lot of variety. So you just don't get, I won't say stale, but you don't get complacent in what you're doing. You know, started off taking information from the public and doing social media, and then doing trap lines. And so I was actually able to get out and see the country and see what they were talking about, because they talked about these different communities, Paisley and Bly and Silver Lake. Driving through there, it almost looks like you're driving through the Grand Canyon. And I'm thinking, I said, you know, if it gets here and it goes, they're like, what are we going to do now? And it's just the variety of things you do, being able, and the experience that you gain doing things like this. Got some really good video, got some good interviews. So all in all, it was a very good experience.